Hello and welcome back to the Premier Injuries podcast. You are here once again to be talking all about Game Week 9 analysis, building up for Game Week 10. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got so much good content here. All the latest injury analysis. We've got some FPL stuff. We've got some great podcasts with the biggest and the best names in the community. But let's just talk about Linn's image once again. Linn, do you have like a library dedicated to Mo Salah on your computer? Just kind of pictures of him to just regale in his brilliance?
Yeah, of course. Doesn't everyone?
I mean, should I admit it on air? I feel like this is something that I shouldn't admit to. I'll let Ben go first before I embarrass myself and say that I have like 1,000 picture collection or something.
I've got one or two in the locker that I dust out every now and again. Who wouldn't have at this moment in time? I mean, it's credit where it's due. He is a king. Yeah. Salah is the king at the minute, and I'm not even going to say arguably. He is the best player, hands down, in the world at this moment in time. Don't at me. Don't mention it. I don't want to hear what you're talking about. It's fact.
Linn's loving life at the moment, and you're going to love life even more because we're going to get on to absolutely ripping into Manchester United in just a moment. Look at that. She's so excited. And in terms of it, yeah, Salah, absolutely brilliant. I don't understand how there's like 30% of the community that still don't own him. Crazy stuff. But let's talk about the prospects to wait on. This is kind of teams that we're not too sure about, or maybe players, individuals that maybe have to come in and out of our teams because the time is about right. Tottenham at the moment, though, last week people were absolutely waxing lyrical. They'd done a job. I will say a job because it wasn't an amazing job against Newcastle, but they done a job. They got a result. And then people saying, oh, Nuno's figured out how to play with this team. Fast forward 1 week, the same problems reoccur. Team didn't create any XG from the 40th minute onwards. Third worst XG at the weekend. They're pretty bad. Son had the best XG opportunity of the game, 0.2. Kane had a fairly good header at one point, but realistically, Fabianski was going to save that all day. Just for most of the match, they were quite boring. Nothing much was happening. However, from now till about game week 15, they have a really good run. They play Man U, who, as we're going to get onto in a moment, are so awful. Everton, embarrassed by Watford this weekend, showing that they're not a good defence. They've got Norwich in there as well. Brentford game week 14 is obviously a difficult one, but there's a lot of good fixtures in there to kind of look forward to. What is kind of your thoughts and feelings on owning their assets, Linn? Are you planning to bring them in?
I had actually planned to bring Son in for Jota, but after watching Son play this week and watching Jota play, that's not going to happen. The fixtures are good, but we shouldn't just trust the fixtures when the team is looking pretty bad.
It's a fair point, and this is something that I think people kind of get a bit carried away with. They kind of assume that as soon as the fixtures go green, a team is going to go into the green and have some great run. The thing that I would say, though, maybe to counter your point a little bit, Linn, is Son has been good over the last few weeks. Tottenham haven't been, but he has been. We talked yesterday about Liverpool, concerns over their starting 11, Jota, in terms of Mane, in terms of Firmino. Jota isn't absolutely nailed each week, whereas Son is. He's going to start week in, week out. He's going to have the opportunity to play. So what does that kind of change your mind a little bit, maybe to give him the chance over Jota to kind of bring him in for that nice run?
Not really, because partly because Son is a lot more money, and then I would have to make other sacrifices to get him in, and I don't think it's worth doing that. I was on the Son train. I really wanted to get him for these fixtures, but I don't think he will score enough for his price. I don't think he's worth it. I could be wrong, but if I had to go with any Spurs player, it would definitely be Son, no doubt whatsoever. But I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah. Ben, let's move it to you with your thoughts on Son. Good fixtures ahead. He hasn't had the most amazing, outrageous data, but he doesn't need it. He's a regular overperformer in terms of his metrics. I think since maybe 2016 or something, he has been the best overperformer of XG in all of Europe's top 5 leagues. He's really good at that. Does that kind of come into your thinking at all? That Man U, as I said, really bad. Everton not very good defensively. Norwich, there's a lot of games here that are almost too good to miss out on.
I find Son a difficult own at his price point. It takes some manoeuvring to free up the funds and get him into that midfield. And for that reason, honestly, I can probably count on one hand how many times I've actually owned him. At 10.2, he's just a little bit expensive, particularly, in and around a no-no team that is playing diabolical football.
Struggling.
And I'm looking at, you look at that Europa Conference League campaign that they're having, and you're thinking, right, who is pushing, who is threatening, who is going to challenge that status quo and look at that starting 11 in the Premier League and say, right, well, if they're not performing, I tell you what, I'm going to go in on a Thursday night, I'm going to show the boss what I can do and that I'm deserving of a place. And we've seen last Thursday they made 11 changes, and you expect the likes of the Dele Alli, the Rio Ferdinand, bigging him up for BT Sport about how he's had this personal trip. What a load of garbage, because he isn't able to tie the boots of what Dele Alli was when he first arrived at the club. There is nobody in that squad on the fringes of that first team who was threatening seriously to come in and compete with anyone. And for that, I cannot risk spending 10.2 on Son, regardless of those fixtures. I mean, look, yeah, they've had some good... they haven't had some good results, sorry. The games that they've won this season have been against the Premier League's so-called weaker teams. Newcastle, I think Watford, Villa. Let's forget about City on the opening weekend, that 1-0. Against anybody with any... or with anything about them, they're struggling. And I know you mentioned that about Everton. Maybe the absence of Doucouré may have a bigger impact on them than potentially the absence of maybe what Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin has had. But I still think Everton are capable of getting results on any day against some of those teams. I mean, it wasn't a typical Rafa performance in terms of their defensively, because he normally sets his team up fairly robust and hard to break down. Yerry Mina was out of that squad, so he was a bit of a miss from them. Look, you've even seen Norwich keep, Tottenham aren't going to do a 7-0. What Chelsea? Tottenham haven't got the players or the squad, that start 11, capable of doing to Norwich what Chelsea done to them. You may have Kane has a decent game. You may have Dembele who will pop up for 60 or 70 minutes until he blows a gasket like he did against Newcastle. But look, I will put money on it now that it's a 2-goal swing in that one. I'm just not feeling any love for Spurs or Son, unfortunately.
Interesting. I thought one of you two would have been quite interested in their assets because it is an interesting fixture swing. But like both of you have said, there's no kind of data to back this up. The team have been really bad this season, and I'm laughing because I'm an Arsenal fan. I do enjoy seeing them do badly. In terms of it, let me just talk you through their terrible data. In terms of expected goals, they are fourth from bottom. Only Watford, Burnley and Norwich have lower expected goals so far this season. And, at least they're consistent. They've matched that, 9 XG with 9 goals. But they're just not doing much. They're near the bottom for, chances created. They're just ahead of Norwich, actually at the bottom there with 66 chances created. They're struggling to get the ball inside the box, so they're just above Norwich in terms of the second worst team for shots inside the box. This is worrying kind of stuff, and like you both said there, for an asset of 10.2, that's a huge gamble on a very premium asset that nothing apart from fixtures is why you're bringing them in, and maybe focus should be elsewhere. Maybe focus should be on somebody like Mason Mount. We're going to talk about him because short term he could be an exciting asset whilst Lukaku and Werner are out, but also long term he might be as well. Initial thoughts and feelings, Lynn, what do you think about maybe Mason Mount as a new midfielder on the horizon? I'm annoyed at myself because I started the season with him. I said he was going to do good if Chelsea continued to play like they did last season with lots of chances created and needing somebody to put them away. They had Lukaku there, but the problem has been something else that I'll explain in a moment. But initial thoughts on Mason Mount?
I think all of us were very interested in Mount at the start of the season. Like, this is going to be his season. That's what we all thought. And then he's just not delivered until now, all of a sudden. So hopefully you can tell us why. I am intrigued.
Well, so what I looked into was last season, Chelsea were creating lots of chances. They had a fairly high XG, but they never met it. They were underperforming, and their chance conversions were pretty low. Timo Werner had a 9% chance conversion ratio. In comes Lukaku, really good striker, 16% chance conversion ratio, much more akin with an elite level kind of striker. But what's happened now is they're taking less shots in the box, creating 0.5 XG per 90 less than last season. And one of the problems might be that Mason Mount just isn't being allowed to be the creative force. He was the second most creative player behind Bruno Fernandes last season in terms of total chances created. And there seems to be, maybe it's the style of the team, maybe it's the way that they started the season to almost protect the players and kind of get clean sheets, see out the games whilst they're kind of finding their feet again and also factoring in the new Lukaku. But there's something that's changed and they're very conservative going forward, and it's not kind of leaked into the defence as well because they're actually conceding more shots and more XG at the back as well is really weird. So arguably Chelsea aren't as good as they were last season, whereas Mason Mount this season 0.27 XG per 90, 0.41 XA per 90 this season. If Tuchel can maybe find the best Mount, maybe they can play as well again, but they're really, really far off the mark in terms of expected goal difference of Liverpool and Man City. And this is something that I talked with James York about at StatsBomb. Chelsea are nowhere near the level of Man City or Liverpool. They're the third best team in the league, and they're probably that by far. Man City and Liverpool are just levels above, though. So what does that kind of say to you, Lynn? And then I'll throw to you, Ben.
It's interesting. It's definitely interesting because we've seen. Also, we thought Lukaku would be a great asset this season, but he's more been a bully at the top and not really been able to get the goals we thought we would get. So your numbers definitely explain a thing or two to me. But then again, now Mount had an amazing game. This is maybe what they needed. Maybe this will lock them up. But he's had one amazing game. So the question is it time to jump in on now, or should we wait? What do you think, Ben?
I think it's a gamble. I think it's a risk. I mean, going back to the point that Jason made, what does this mean in terms of what Chelsea have done so far? I think it means that there's potential there. There's a lot more in the locker. There's a lot more to come from Chelsea. And if they are to hit the levels of last season, then Mason Mount would be one of those, you would think, one of the benefactors of that. how much of an impact or influence the loss of Lukaku and Timo Werner have on Mason Mount's performance at the weekend? Is there almost an over-reliance when you have Lukaku in your team? He is the main guy. He's going to score us the goals. Let's play the ball up to him. Let's change our footballing philosophy. Take him away. You then look at, right, well, you have Werner, take him out. You've got Kai Havertz. Can Kai Havertz be relied upon as a guy who is going to be, bringing you 20 to 30 goals a season? Probably not. Certainly not in England anyway. So is there an acceptance or people like Mason Mount saying, well, actually, now is the time to stand up and be counted and deliver for this Chelsea team? And look, we've seen that perform. Yes, it was Norwich, but they were coming off the back of consecutive clean sheets. So defensively, they were on a lot more of a solid footing than they had been when they started the season with a 5-3-2. And they actually, in the first half, I didn't check it. You may have checked it. But in the first half, I think, was it 3-0 half time? Norwich, actually, in terms of their XG conceded, actually gave up less than what they would have done if they had conceded a penalty. So defensively, they weren't giving away high quality, big chances. Chelsea were just really clinical in getting the ball into the back of the net. And I think, that's to their credit. And they've done a job on Norwich, and probably a better job than maybe a lot of people actually appreciate, because they just look at the table and think, well, Norwich just aren't good. They are the whipping boys. But look, nobody's went out there and hit them for 7 this season.
Yeah, even Liverpool haven't. They only managed 5, and maybe later I say only 5, like as if that's some sort of big problem. It is interesting, and maybe the narratives around Chelsea might change over the coming weeks. But the start of the season, people saying definite title contenders, and they're doing well at the top, and teams, elite level teams can overperform XG and things like that. But just kind of looking at that underlying data, like I said, we talked about the attack there. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the defence, because like I said, last 9 games of last season. So I think this is more of a fair comparison than over the 38 game averages. They averaged 0.83 XG conceded, whereas in the first 8 games, I haven't factored in game week 9 yet into my data, they've averaged 1.31 XG conceded. So like I said, they've lost 0.5 of a goal in attack, and they're conceding 0.5 more of a goal at the back. It's really interesting kind of data that they're still a good side, no doubt about that. You do have to factor in that in one of those games they played Liverpool with 10 men on the pitch, and that really negatively impacted XG conceded. But that's still over 8 game weeks that they've not been at the level that they were last season. Maybe throwing the final bit to you, Ben, does that kind of figure into your thinking of maybe they might be saving themselves or playing a certain way so that they can have longevity through the season? Tuchel's comments about Lukaku being overplayed, is he kind of maybe thinking the whole team play a bit more conservatively at the start of the season, a bit like Nuno Espirito Santo said that he did at Wolves last season, so that when they hit the ground running, post-January, they can really have a title charge?
I mean, absolutely. What we do know with Tuchel, he won't take any chances. He won't risk players unnecessarily. We've seen that with N'Golo Kante at the weekend. Player completed a full training session Friday afternoon, said he had a little bit of tightness, sent to the physios, had a little bit of a massage and said, look, we'll make a decision on Saturday morning. And Tuchel went, no decision. I'll take it out of your hands. Have yourself a weekend off and rest fully. One of the biggest factor in football, which you can never overstate, is availability. You can be the best footballer in the world, but if you're not available for selection, it doesn't make a hap worth a difference. So, when you're juggling the Premier League, Champions League, then yes, and players are coming back off, European competition. The likes of Jorginho, went deep into that, and Mason Mount. So of course, it's got to be at the forefront of their minds when they're talking about managing players, particularly ahead of this festive period. And it'll be how, it could be that teams and squads who are managed and can navigate that tricky period the best, that would be their opportunity to really lay a marker in the sand for their title credentials, because the league may not be won, but it could certainly be lost around those fixtures at Christmas.
I mean, my thinking a little bit, the last point on this, because I think we've given Chelsea a fair bit of analysis in terms of this discussion point, but I think Liverpool are almost doing the opposite to Chelsea. They'll be looking at the fact that Mo Salah, Mane, Keita will be going off to the African Cup of Nations. Two of their big three strikers are going to be gone. Maybe they're doing their title charge early, get the points on the board, whilst they have to kind of cope without Mo Salah and Mane. I don't know how many games it could be. Is it like 3 or 4? I don't know, Ben, but the winter break is timed nicely for them in terms of that. But they can still look at those games and think we might struggle in them. The players might not come back 100% fit. We get the points on the board now. It might be that kind of thoughts and feelings. So that's why I'm saying the narratives around Chelsea might play out through the course of the 38 game season. But they've started the season not as well as people maybe might think they have. Let's move the attention, though, to a team that has done well in attack. It's West Ham. Mikel Antonio, I think he's causing a lot of problems because West Ham now have the second worst fixtures over the next 6 game weeks. We talked about Tottenham as a team that have great fixtures, but you wouldn't want to own them. Mikel Antonio himself is almost the opposite, that they've got bad fixtures, but you want to trust in Antonio because he's so damn good. What do you think going forward then from game week? Well, from now, they've got Aston Villa next game, which could be nice. But up to game week 16 then, they've got a really difficult fixture. Lynn, thoughts and feelings? Do you think that you have him in for those tougher matches, or is it time to take him out?
I think he's fairly fixture-proof. I think he could score against anyone. And at the moment, there aren't that many strikers that appeal to me. So for me, he's definitely a keep at the moment.
Ben, what do you think, though, with maybe Europa League thrown in there as well? Does Antonio justify his place in our teams?
Absolutely. Can we say this on the YouTube algorithm? It boils my piss. When people look at removing players because suddenly they see a couple of red, difficult games on the fixture list, you've got a player who is playing well, who's scoring goals. Ultimately, that's what it is. They're confidence players, strikers. He's taking his opportunities. And, 2 positive bits of information have come out within the last few days with regards to Mikel Antonio. Antonio was rested completely from last week's Europa League squad. David Moyes said, we took this as an opportunity to prepare him for Sunday, keep him out the fire line and just focus on the Premier League. Great. Done his stuff, got the winning goal. Secondly, the player himself talked about his, ongoing concerns and problems that he's had with his hamstrings in recent seasons. He's talked about how he's changed his lifestyle, he's changed his diet, he's changed how the way he's trained, he's changed how the way he's managing his body. And up until this point, he's had absolutely no kickback in terms of issues with, the said muscular problems. So that's been absolutely fine. So he is being managed. David Moyes said, we will look to manage him. He will not be playing every game. By that, what we mean in Europe and then the league. So if we can afford to rest him, and it looks as if, West Ham are flying in that Europa League, then, they can afford just to sort of keep Mikel Antonio out of that and focus on the Premier League. And that can only be good news for fantasy managers.
And it is an interesting talking point because he's somebody with such fantastic data that you'd be loath to drop him. But there is 2 difficult fixtures in there that you'd think he can't score in, Liverpool and Man City. At his price point, it makes it hard to kind of drop him. But if you've got good squads, then maybe you can, maybe bring in a defender for that game week when he plays Man City and for the Liverpool one as well. It does make it difficult. Let's move on to the bad discussion points or the bad teams, bad players. Start off. Linn, Manchester United. Go on. Let it rip.
I am a Liverpool supporter, but I felt bad for them. It was that bad that I felt bad as a Liverpool supporter. Yeah. I think this kind of just proven that the boots Ole is trying to fill, they're just too big. They need a better manager. It's as simple as that. Like, he keeps benching Sancho. He needs to get the best out of Sancho. He's a fantastic player. Why is he sitting on the bench? There's so many questions about the way he's played United so far this season, and I just think this is the proof we needed. He's not good enough to manage Manchester United.
Ooh, big word. Ben, you coming in to rescue Ole?
You know what? This is another one. Boils may piss, right? So agree first and foremost, yes, Ole, I think lacks in certain areas. However, what I would say is, at what point do these multi-million pound so-called world-class players stand up, show a pair of bollocks, and accept that they haven't been good enough? The displays that they've been given, in that pitch. I mean, they talked about Jorginho at the start of the season, absolute garbage. He plays elite level sport at an elite level. Look after yourself like an elite player. Harry Maguire, hangover from the Euros, atrocious. The fact, open your mouth up on, you're a captain of that team, open your mouth up, and instead it was like the Keystone Cops, that back line. Paul Pogba, absolute disgrace, attitude. Not in that starting 11 because he cannot be counted upon. Even Ole can see that guy cannot be trusted, and just bad news for that Man United team. Get him out of the club with his agent, far from that club as far as possible. Stop hanging your hat on Ole. We know that. Everybody keeps banging the same drum. It's like Steve Bruce at Newcastle. When he goes, he's a human shield gone. Who's going to stand up there and ensure that, they deserve a place in that team? They're going to fight for that United shirt, because what they're doing now is absolutely atrocious. I mean, that Liverpool performance was great. Make no bones about it. That was fantastic. But a lot of that was created by United's just inept display. They were absolutely shocking.
I wouldn't like to comment on players' own positions here, but it was such a bad performance. It makes you wonder, do they want Ole out the club? Like, I don't want to make guesses on what their motivations were, but it was just dreadful. And I think the most insulting thing, like Linn said, was that people just felt sorry for them. In years gone by, you would have revelled in Man United playing so badly, you would have laughed in their face, but they've fallen so badly from grace now that it's not even funny anymore.
It was funny. It was absolutely, I loved it. Absolutely grind them into the ground and beat them. The only thing that really, really disappointed me about Sunday's performance from Liverpool, at 5-0 with 15 minutes to go, they took their foot off the gas and they started just to retain the ball. And if that had been a Man United years ago and they were 5-0 against Liverpool, Fergie would have had them on the front foot and it would have been 6, 7 and 8. That would be the only criticism of Liverpool, because they were against 10 men. And you know what? It was a big derby at Old Trafford, and they had an opportunity to do some real serious damage. Not just 5-0. It should have been 7 or 8.
I was surprised you not brought out the classic phrase, "I would have loved it." That was a terrible impression of Keegan, wasn't it?
I thought it was Steve Bruce.
Yeah. You weren't even sure if it was a Geordie person or not. Yeah, I mean, Manchester United, we've kind of gone through it over the last, I don't know how many weeks that they've been in our bad teams for a while. Norwich, we've kind of covered a little bit. Again, I don't know if it's a team that we really need to go too much into, apart from questions over what the hell do they want. Like, there's no change in personnel, there's no change in manager. It's just kind of lunacy continuing on the pitch. Let's turn our attentions then to maybe somebody that we can analyse. It's Everton, their defence. Absolute shambles this weekend against Watford. And it wasn't even like a lucky kind of thing. They were destroyed on XG as well. Watford just went in towards the end of that match. In terms of it, you've mentioned it a bit before, Ben. Decore is absent. There's a big hole in that in terms of the Everton midfield. So there is a bit of explanation in terms of maybe personnel, but it's still comparable to the Manchester United performance in the fact that they just absolutely fell apart and maybe unforgivable. But what does this say going forward? Is Everton a team that we can be confident that people will score against? Is there hope that they might actually start doing performances? Because looking at their data before this game week, they were, top 4, top 3 of XG conceded data. The Watford, the fact that they got a lot of XG has kind of brought them down a little bit, but they were still supposed to be relatively tight at the back. What's going wrong then, Lynn? Why can't they keep a clean sheet? Why are they letting so many goals in? Is it Pickford? Is it the defenders? What's happening?
I think, it's obviously Decore is missing. They're missing someone in the midfield who can get the ball, get it moving, going forwards, someone to rely on and pass to. I don't think they've got that secure player. Like, they don't have their Van Dijk. They don't have that boss in the back. And Pickford is certainly not it.
He causes probably more worries than being a boss. Ben, what's your opinions on Everton? Going forward, are they a team that we can kind of be confident when they come up on that fixture difficulty rating? You look at it, it's a red, it's Everton. No, it's not. Their defence is poor.
I think Everton overperformed early part of the season. We've seen that game at Old Trafford. Week before the game week 1, Manchester United beat them 4-0. And it was very un-Rafa-like how Everton were. And I feared the worst, to be honest, because we know what kind of a toxic environment it could be given his arrival and obviously his close ties with Liverpool. But Everton have done quite well, overall, that result aside, given the fact that they've had those injury problems. The backline as well has been fairly unsettled. I think Yerry Mina is a big player for that Everton team. I think he is their Van Dijk. The only issue is keeping him fit and making sure he is available. Because Seamus Coleman, he's getting the twilight years of his career. Lucas Digne, again, had a disrupted summer after picking up a hamstring injury. Hasn't been great, but we don't really look at Digne as being a defender. It's more of, what can he create up top? And then we've seen in different performances from the likes of Keane, seems to go at peaks and troughs. Ben Godfrey looks good at times. Mason Holgate looks well out of the equation. And look, I'm just not a fan of Jordan Pickford either. 1, his arms are too small, and 2, he's a Mackham. So you're going to get absolutely no praise from me on him. And of course, like I say, I think the loss of Decore, you've got Alan in there who could do a decent job, but who you sitting alongside him? Tom Davies, maybe Gabberman, maybe if you can keep him fit. I just think there's players in that team who just aren't good enough. Iwobi, I think, lacks. I wouldn't look at those. I wouldn't look at any game against Everton and go, that's 3 points guaranteed. But, because I think they are capable of getting a result, particularly when everybody's back. But more often than not, I think they're just going to flatter, deceive, and probably disappoint you.
I just got a funny image of Jordan Pickford, Velociraptor arms, very T-Rex arms.
Did you not see the Alan San Maxim post? I think it was last season when he actually posted Jordan Pickford as a T-Rex.
No, I'll have to look it up.
And I mean, look, this is founded, mate. I wouldn't say hatred. But when Newcastle were getting beat off Everton 2-0 a couple of seasons back, and Pickford was coming off the pitch, giving it the big one and mouthing off to the crowd and this, that and the other. Of course, because he was getting a little bit of grief because of Sunderland. And we came back and we beat them 3-2, and it was actually him that had a howler for the third goal. So, look, it's all friendly, jovial banter between the Maggies and the Magnums.
Well, I mean, going forward, Newcastle might be having more laughs against Jordan Pickford. Just a final question on that. I mean, if England had won the Euros, would it have sickened you to the back teeth that Jordan Pickford would have had a winner's medal?
He's so inconsequential, I couldn't really care either way, whether he does or not.
I want to bring back to a point, though, that you said. Overperformance at the start of this season, Everton, that's the same as last year. They started absolutely on fire under Ancelotti. People were bringing in the likes of James Rodriguez. People like us, Ben, kind of warned James Rodriguez, not much game time in his legs. Not many seasons has he been playing that he's had a lot of time. Don't get me in, he's not very fit. Do you think that there's just maybe a problem that they've started too quickly once again, or is it injuries have kind of hit them? Whereas Rafa, he's so methodical. He's a very detail-orientated manager, very, very different from Ancelotti, even in play style and everything. Is this just a load of disruptions to his master plan, his long-term goals?
I mean, he's very, very astute. Doesn't leave any stone unturned. He is meticulous in the data that he collects, how he analyzes and how he chooses to use that. His knowledge, his understanding, and how the plan he wants to implement, those skills have been honed for decades. So, look, one bad result, he won't deviate from that plan. I think injuries, yes, undoubtedly have had an influence on that. But like I say, I think, Rafa has a vision and understanding of where he sees Everton going. And, are they going to threaten that European spot? No. Are they going to go down? No. We're looking at an 8th or 9th to maybe a 13th or 14th, I think. And that would be, I think that's where I basically see their squad at the moment. And that's where they're going to, that's where I see them ending up.
So last two discussion points here. Apologies, Lynn, because this is one that only Ben can answer. Raphinha, is he injured? Is he out for Norwich?
I would say at this moment in time, out. We've talked about hamstring injuries, ankle injuries appear to be flavour of the month at the moment. We've seen that with Reece James, we've seen it with Lukaku, and now we've seen it with Raphinha. And we talk about this mid to high ankle sprain. Basically, the higher up it is, the more severe it is. You're doubling a typical timeline for a normal ankle sprain. Now, the difference here with maybe Lukaku and James and then Raphinha was held off the pitch by two of the backroom staff and straight down the tunnel. And yes, he's come out and he said, look, I'm fine. It's nothing severe. Take that with a pinch of salt, because the risk factors associated with this type of injury could be the fact that there may be some kind of fracture involved. And I'm looking at that and maybe understanding and thinking, well, okay, the bone's fine, but there's still, damage in and around that syndesmosis area, which indicates, given the timelines that we've got involved, a couple of weeks until the international break, I would think And you can never make a definitive diagnosis based on video evidence alone. It's all about how the injury may evolve. Thanks, Marcello. And so, yeah, but for me, if you were to ask, will he be playing this weekend? I would give you a categorically, I would say no. And I'm fairly certain he won't be back before the break. You could be wrong, but, just based on what we've seen and given, he has a high tolerance for pain. Rafinha, we've seen him play with niggles and problems in the past. For him to be carried off in that manner for treatment straight away, that's normally an indication that that's fairly severe based on the history and what we know of the player.
Finally, Vardy out too?
We'd have to see. The fact that he complained of discomfort during the warm-up but wanted to give it a go, and then Brendan Rodgers talked about, there was no point in risking him, particularly given the form of Patson Daka, who was great in the Europa League. We will see. Of course, the problem is always going to be is what's caused that pain and discomfort in the knee. Is it been something that's been carrying for a while? We just don't know what that is. The fact that he played 45 minutes in relative, maybe it's a little bit of minor discomfort, but nothing too serious. Maybe that's an indication that it was just something minor and a niggle. But at the moment, I would say 50-50. Maybe send for imaging, see if there's anything underlying there. Hopefully there's nothing too sinister or severe. And it may just be, a couple of days just to get rid of that. Whatever it was, there could be, something floating around in that knee that was just irritating and aggravating the problem, which, like I say, it could be flushed out and moved on. So, yeah, fingers crossed.
There you go. Well, that's the covered positives, negatives, goods, bad, and those in between teams and players from game week 9. Looking forward to game week 10. I'm going to wish everybody the best of luck. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. But for now, from all of us here, it's a goodbye and a good luck with the rest of your weeks.